It began on a clear summer morning. The wide street, lined with maple trees, lay silent. A red sedan waited in front of Paige Birgfeld's small bakery. Inside, the ovens hummed in the empty kitchen. Warmth lingered in the air, smelling like fresh dough and vanilla frosting. This was Paige's world, a familiar, safe place where she spent most of her weekdays. Today felt like any other. Paige tied her apron, adjusted her hair, and stepped outside. Her eyes swept the street, a neighbor walking her dog, a teenager bicycling past, children's laughter echoing from a nearby playground. Everything looked normal. She smiled to herself, thinking of her 3 children arriving soon. She loved their chaotic mornings, the rush of school drop-offs and the quiet afterward when the bakery filled with customers. No one would guess how much she depended on this routine. She unlocked the car, planning to buy milk and eggs just a few blocks away. The errands were quick. Her mind drifted to bills. Rent was due, a school trip on the calendar, an unexpected repair to her oven. Her husband helped when he could, but Paige carried most of the weight. Running a small business wasn't easy. Still, she prided herself on being both reliable and resourceful. But that morning, something shifted. Paige slid into the driver's seat. The engine cranked and settled, the dashboard lights fading. She glanced at the bakery window, her world, and pressed the gas pedal. The car rolled forward, taking the first turn onto Main Street. As she drove, she noticed a silver pickup trailing her at a distance. Random, she thought. People parked, asked questions, looked around, but the truck stayed behind. She checked the mirror, then settled her gaze ahead. A flicker of unease crawled in, but she dismissed it. Maybe it was coincidence. A minute later, she reached the grocery store. She pulled into a parking spot and cut the engine. No one followed. The silver truck remained parked across the street. She stepped out and crossed the pavement, keys in hand. Everything felt normal again, until it didn't. Inside the store, the cool air was a welcome change. Bright lights reflected off egg cartons and shelves. Her phone buzzed. She checked the message, typed a quick reply, and pocketed it. A cashier smiled, asked how she was. Paige answered with a gentle lift of her eyes. She placed a carton in her cart, then another. As she moved toward the dairy aisle, she scanned the aisles for someone she recognized. Routine, the sound of a truck engine again. Looking out the store window, she saw the silver pickup pull up beside her red sedan. A man stepped out, paused, then approached Paige's car. She couldn't see his face, only his tall frame and dark clothing. He opened the rear door, reached in, took something, a bag, a box, then closed it and walked away. The man moved to the front, sat in the driver's seat, and drove off slowly. He followed the car out of the lot. Paige stood frozen. She watched the sedan roll ahead to the curb. No passengers. She remembered her phone, still inside the store. She ran out, heart pounding, but she reached too late. Her car was gone, driving away with someone she didn't know, carrying who knows what. The parking lot remained empty, except for her cart, and a puzzled cashier at the door. Back in the store, her phone buzzed again. No missed calls, no message from her husband. She shivered, suddenly cold. Her errands meant nothing now. She had one mission: find the car, or at least know where it was going. She barged outside, scanning the street. No red sedan. No silver truck. She called her husband. He picked up, his voice calm as always. "On my way," he said. But Paige refused to explain. She couldn't find her words. Instead, she ended the call. She glanced at the empty storefront. The morning sun seemed too bright. The day felt wrong. Minutes later, black and white police cars screeched into the lot. Blue lights flashed against brick walls and glass doors. Officers rushed out, radios crackling. Paige's baking restock run had turned suddenly into something everyone called a kidnapping. Detectives took statements from the cashier and security footage. They described every detail: the silver pickup, the man, the open doors, the missing phone, everything until the car simply disappeared. A small crowd gathered. Some whispered the bakery was cursed. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Paige was one of the good ones. The owner of a nearby shop posted updates on social media. Photos of a smiling mother with flour on her cheek circulated. Comments filled with, "Hope she's okay." But inside, no one knew what truth lay behind that smile. By afternoon, media vans arrived, jamming the street. Reporters approached the bakery, cameras rolling. Paige's husband stood outside, talking to a reporter, pointing toward the store, where Paige had disappeared. His voice sounded distant across the crowd. He mentioned she was safe, but away running errands. No one saw how tightly he gripped the mic stand or how his hands shook. No one noted the fear behind the calm. Late that night, the burnt-out Hulk appeared on a dark, dusty road outside town. A red sedan, blackened and twisted, half buried in a ditch. Flames had consumed most of it. No signs of Paige. Inside, police found personal items: her wallet, a single school photo, and a small silver key with no obvious purpose. There was no phone, no proof of identity, no clue. Only a link to an escort service printed on a scrap of paper, bearing one burner phone number that hadn't contacted anyone in days. By then, neighbors knew what the police wouldn't yet say. This was no accident. The secret, the danger, had been buried under her Mother of the Year image. Now, it lay exposed in charred metal and unanswered questions. People whispered, who was Paige really? And what had she gotten into that led to this? At midnight, the town slept under street lamps and radio static, the bakery cold and empty, the red sedan gone. And Paige? She was nowhere to be found. Why this opening works. Strong visual hook, the sunlit street, the idle sedan. Things seem normal until the truck arrives. Character setup. We meet Paige in her element, feeling her routine and pressures. Suspense. Building. The sudden intrusion of the truck, the man taking items, moments layered with tension. Cliffhanger ending. The burnt car, the secret slip. Earthquake reveals at chapter end. Leave the audience desperate to know more. This expanded. Chapter blends clarity with rising tension and emotional stakes. It orients viewers in her world, hints at underlying problems, and ends with dramatic impact, making them eager to continue the story. Paige's disappearance had left a hole in her family's life, but what came next shattered the image of the quiet mom they thought they knew. Investigators spent days digging into her routines, asking neighbors, scanning phone records, tracing her steps. What they uncovered felt like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit, until they unearthed the escort service. She had two separate lives. One was the one her children and neighbors saw. The early mornings spent kneading dough in the bakery, the afternoon pickups from school, the cozy nights family dinners. The other was hidden, late nights behind a laptop, logging into a website called Models Inc., exchanging messages with clients, setting up appointments in anonymous rooms. She used a burner phone, prepaid and untraceable, tucked it away hidden in her kitchen drawer. It was smart, clean, practiced, but it wasn't who Paige really was, or at least it was who she had become. It started to make sense. She'd complained, once about the oven's broken thermostat, about bills stacking up from school, about the toaster's sudden failure. Her husband thought they were small annoyances, temporary setbacks. But to Paige, they were tipping points. Her expenses had doubled. The rent was due, her kids needed uniforms and books, and she was determined to maintain their lifestyle. So, she took matters into her own hands. She chose the escort world carefully. Her profile was discreet. Tasteful photos, a gentle smile, nothing suggestive. She wrote that she was a private companion, offering friendliness, conversations, and trust. She never described herself as something unsavory, but they paid well, these clients, doctors, businessmen, men whose faces blurred in her memory. She used the money to pay rent. She used it to keep her bakery afloat. She used it to hold the pieces of her family together. When the investigators found the charger for her burner phone tucked behind a row of jars in the kitchen, and the printed confirmation receipts for hotel rooms hidden in her sock drawer, the town reeled. Friends spoke in hushed tones. She was always so sweet, they said. She looked tired lately, said others. Her teenage daughter confessed she'd overheard muffled phone conversations after midnight. Mom never told me it was work, the girl said. A friend from church admitted she once bumped into Paige near a motel, but stepped away quickly, thinking she'd misunderstood. Now it seemed her instincts were right. Evidence mounted, lodge receipts, transaction records from the escort site, and logs linking the burner number to hotel check-ins late at night. Detectives pieced together her last week. On the Monday after she disappeared, she had sent a message. "You know I need it." Then she met a client that same day in a downtown suite. She sent their hostess a small bag at the front desk. Investigators found the bag's tag in Paige's car after it burned. It contained her wallet, keys, and a scrap of paper. One phone number she didn't recognize. No name, no warning, no goodbye. Her husband insisted he had no idea. He said she never confided in him. He thought the late nights were due to baking orders and errands. Their marriage had fractured months earlier under financial strain, but he said they were working on it. He'd never questioned why she came home so late. Now he looked back at nights he waited under yellow porch lamps, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge. Maybe she hadn't wanted sympathy. Maybe she didn't want to ask for help. In those small moments, she'd kept him at arm's length, but never fully gone until that day. Their 3 children were stunned, scared. The youngest child, 5 years old, asked if Mom was on vacation. The middle child, 10, waited by the window each evening. The oldest, 15, tracked every story on the news, unaware of her mother's secret. At school, they whispered. In the bakery, business slowed as rumors spread. The image of Mom Paige began to tarnish, stained by suspicion. Still, no. One believed she was in trouble. They believed she'd made poor choices, but that didn't put her life at risk. When the burner phone stopped sending messages 10 hours after she disappeared, everyone thought she'd decided to disappear. Leave town, start new. Maybe she'd wanted no drama. They didn't know what else to think. Then a tip came in. Escort client had recognized Paige from her online photos. A man named Lester Jones was questioned. He denied meeting Paige, but records conflicted. His truck was seen parked outside her school that afternoon. A school bus driver remembered noticing a strange silver pickup near the drop-off zone, the same pickup that shadowed Paige earlier that day. In the footage, the windows were tinted. The driver wore a cap, face hidden. Then the truck followed her to the grocery store. Then it drove away with her red sedan. Police brought in Lester for questioning. His demeanor was calm, almost too calm. He insisted he didn't know Paige. He said the truck belonged to his ex-wife's new boyfriend. He had an alibi. He said he was with a friend. Detectives checked his story and found it shaky. There was no gasoline purchase at the time he claimed he went out. Instead, transaction logs showed he filled the tank at the time Paige vanished. The timing was suspect. He also had a criminal record, assault charges, accusations of domestic violence. Investigators dug deeper. Who else had Lester harmed? What was his motive? Yet even with suspicion swirling, there was no obvious evidence he'd harmed her. No body, no confession, just phone records, a burnt car, a hidden life. The case felt incomplete, untethered. Prosecutors hesitated. They needed more than a hunch. In the meantime, the town tried to return to normal. But without Paige, nothing felt right. The bakery closed its doors. The children held their breath every night. Friends called, texted, visited. No one asked about her secret life. No one said escort. They tiptoed around the reality. But each of them, in private moments, wondered, what had she been hiding? And how far had she gone to protect her family? Detectives re-examined every scrap. The motel receipts, the burner phone records, the call with the unknown number. They compared the voice on that number with Lester's voice, using spectral analysis. The match was weak, no direct evidence. Still, footsteps heard by a motel housekeeper that night sounded like someone walking with a limp. And Lester limped. From a knee surgery 6 months earlier, still no arrest. Still no body. A town braced for more headlines, more accidental leaks. The secret life that had been her lifeline now felt like a trap. As the weeks passed, the evidence accumulated slowly. Layer by layer, detectives uncovered her double world. Soon, they hoped, they'd find the missing piece to bring closure, one way or another. But for now, the case stood on a foundation of secrets. A mother torn between two worlds, a suspect with motive and means, and a family left waiting. In the darkness of her burner phone's last signal, in the heat of her car ablaze, and in the silence of those motel halls, the truth waited. And if patience held, the police believed it would emerge and change everything. This chapter builds tension by revealing Paige's hidden world, layering evidence, increasing stakes, and closing on an unresolved note to keep viewers hooked. Strategies such as alternating pacing, foreshadowing red herrings, and deepening character motivations follow suspense writing best practices. Detectives had a name now, Lester Jones. He was a mechanic in town, a man who fixed engines by day and kept to himself by night. His record wasn't clean. A past assault charge and rumors of aggression floated quietly in town gossip. Investigators found his number dialed from Paige's burner phone hours before she vanished. A silver pickup. Matching surveillance footage was registered in his name. The pieces were falling together, but the gap between suspicion and proof remained wide. When detectives first walked into Lester's garage, the air smelled of oil and rubber. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, they watched him wipe grease off. A wrench. He didn't flinch when they asked to search his property. His calm demeanor unsettled them. Something about the way he moved, the slight limp from a knee surgery 6 months earlier, nagged at their gut. But calm didn't mean guilty. Investigators had to dig deeper. They began retracing Lester's movements. He claimed he was at a friend's house the evening Paige disappeared. His friend confirmed, initially. But then something slipped. The friend said they watched a movie together. The time window overlapped only partially. Gas receipts showed Lester filled a silver truck that afternoon. A receipt matched a nearby convenience store camera, but the truck looked clean in the shot. No dust, no scratches, just a polished vehicle that seemed ready to shadow someone. When the footage was enlarged, it revealed a man with a cap on, head down, hiding his face. But the build matched Lester's. It was a clue, but still circumstantial. Detectives dug into Lester's past. They spoke to his ex-wife's new boyfriend. He was evasive, hands trembling when asked about Lester's whereabouts. He described a man who didn't like secrets. It was a red flag. But red flags don't convict. They spoke to neighbors. A motel housekeeper remembered a man with a limp checking out late after telling her he needed space. The limp matched Lester. The timing matched Paige's last appointment. The motel receipt from the burner phone listed a suite cleared. The next morning, nothing else connected them. It was like walking on glass, one misstep and everything shattered. The team turned to technology. They compared the phone records. Paige's phone pinged near Lester's garage that morning. The burner phone pinged near the motel that evening. But it never pinged near Lester's home. Why? Because he kept it hidden. Anonymity wrapped in silence. Forensic audio analysts applied spectrogram filters to the motel's hallway mic recording. They captured footsteps. Even a limp podcast is unique. They compared it to a test walk from Lester. The tempo, the heel drop, the pause between steps, every feature overlapped. It wasn't a smoking gun, but a strand of rope tightening around him. Meanwhile, the longer Lester remained free, the more the town tensed. The bakery stayed boarded up. The kids grew up in whispers and wide eyes. School counselors circulated notes. No one talked about Paige's night job. They'd nod and move on, uncomfortable with hidden truths. But they couldn't move past the question, what happened to her? Detectives brought Lester back in. He entered the interrogation room with practiced ease. He sat in the chair and listened to them lay out the facts. The phone pings, the truck records, the limp footsteps. He didn't deny the limp, didn't question the pings. He said he worked hard, paid bills, and knew nothing about Paige. His alibi fell apart when they revealed surveillance from the convenience store showing the silver truck that afternoon. His face flickered, barely. A tremor. Not quite fear, but recognition that the walls around him were closing. Then came a twist neither side saw coming. Phone forensic experts retrieved deleted records from Paige's burner. Among millions of erased entries, one phone number remained. It linked to a prepaid account at a local gas station kiosk. That station was across the street from Lester's workplace. An employee remembered a woman matching Paige's description, alone, that afternoon, walking toward the kiosk, not taking a truck to buy gas, but using her own car. The day before, she vanished. It meant she'd been near Lester's garage. She might have arranged something, met him there, or maybe they argued. Or worse. That revelation changed the tone in the room. Detectives watched Lester's jaw tighten. His eyes darted to the floor. He swallowed, but said nothing. They waited for more. Hours passed. The silence stretched thick like wet cloth in the interrogation room. Finally, one detective dropped a new question. "Did you harm her?" Lester flinched. His voice came out low. "I didn't want to. Not like that." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even a clear answer. But it was a crack. Evidence alone couldn't close the deal. They needed proof, something solid to tie Lester to her disappearance. Detectives decided to stage a controlled leak. They announced they were pressing charges for kidnapping, not murder, based on communications between the burner phone and Lester. The hope was that guilt might drive him to slip. Alternatively, they planned a warrant to search his workshop. They needed physical evidence, something left behind in metal grease or beneath floorboards. In the drab gray of the early morning, they returned to Lester's garage. Understanding that forensic light reveals what the eye cannot see, they swept through. They used chemical luminol test under puddles of oil. A hidden drip showed up bright. Fluorescent? Blood? Or something else? They collected swabs. They combed floor crevices, tested the rag bin, every corner. Finally, beneath a wooden shelving unit, they found a small duffel bag wrapped in duct tape. The telltale sign, the same tape found on the duct-taped body pieces in other cases, none of which had a body yet. The bag was empty, but the handle was frayed. Investigators suspected it had carried something heavy. They compared the bags. Fibers to fibers found in Paige's burned car and on motel sheets. There was a match in 2 independent labs. That, plus the footsteps, plus phone pings, plus the silver truck, plus the motel evidence. The weight of circumstantial evidence piled up high. They arrested Lester that afternoon. They informed him of his rights. He asked for a lawyer. He didn't resist. He didn't break down. He just sat, that forced calm again, as handcuffs clicked. As they led him away, the town watched in hush. For some, it meant hope, justice moving forward. For others, it stirred fear. What if he'd killed her? Where was her body? He'd taken a life. Or maybe someone else had. Maybe another layer was hiding in shadows. But one thing gained clarity. Paige's secret life had connected her to a man capable of violence. They had crossed paths. She had disappeared. Now justice had its first suspect. Detectives prepared the indictment. Kidnapping, tampering with evidence, possible murder. They knew they'd need the body for a murder charge. But for now, they had to stand on what they did have. The case moved to court, but the next chapter would reveal a final, brutal piece of the puzzle. This chapter intensifies suspicion and tension, introduces red herrings and complications, deepens the stakes, and builds to a pivotal arrest. Techniques. Follow suspense writing advice like years passed after Lester's arrest. His face appeared in newspapers, on TV screens, and in courtroom sketches. The community held its breath, waiting for justice. But one piece was still missing: Paige. The world heard about her secret life, her burned car, Lester's arrest, but no one knew where Paige had gone or what had happened to her. That silence kept the pain alive. Detectives kept digging. They combed through Lester's statements, hoping he'd slip. They searched land records, parcels of abandoned property, old motels, rivers, forests, not just in town, but miles away. On Route 50, east of town, a lonely canyon came into focus. A driver had stopped one afternoon, noticing torn duct tape stuck to a rock face and bits of burnt glass nearby. The driver snapped a photo and quietly informed authorities. The tape looked eerily familiar. It matched the pattern of the tape. used on Lester's duffel bag. A team of state troopers, forensic specialists, and FBI agents descended on the gorge. The land was steep and wild, full of rock ledges and thorny underbrush. Forensic archaeologists used probe poles and a metal detector. The ground was soft in some places, stubborn in others. Then they found a piece of duct tape half buried in soggy soil. That was enough to trigger a grid search. Within hours, they uncovered bone fragments wrapped in duct tape just like the kind found in Lester's bag. The remains were in several parts, hidden under layers of leaves and twigs. Each piece taped rigorously, as if someone wanted to keep them together, or keep them separate. Evidence technicians moved carefully. They brushed leaves, photographed every angle, cataloged every fragment. They found strands of hair, fibers, from a red blouse, a broken silver key, the same design as the key found in the burnt car months before. The fragments were carried to the state crime lab with solemn care. Autopsy specialists gathered. It had been years, but they believed the remains belonged to Paige. No fresh tissue remained, just skull fragments and bone shards. Forensic anthropologists examined the pelvis shape, dental records, and a healed broken nose from her teenage years. They confirmed the identity: Paige Birgfeld. Her remains had been hidden and forgotten, waiting in that secluded gorge. The cause of death remained inconclusive. No bullet fragments, no stab wounds, but the duct tape binding was unmistakable evidence of foul play. Investigators pieced together the timeline. Death likely occurred within days of her disappearance. Forensic entomologists studied insect larvae and estimated the body had been left there in late June 2007. Soil samples stuck to the fragments contained pollen from local wildflower species that bloom only in early July. The timing aligned, confirming she never survived long after the kidnapping. The discovery ignited renewed energy in the investigation. Prosecutors amended charges. Lester now faced first-degree murder. The burning of the sedan became evidence of attempted concealment. The motel receipts, the burner phone, the duffel bag, all had established his intent. Now, they had remains to prove it. But another surprise emerged. In DNA swabs taken from the duct tape, forensics found not only Paige's DNA, but also trace amounts of a different profile: male, older. That profile didn't match Lester's, but also didn't match any person in the database. It hinted at another person's presence, someone who had handled the tape or been in contact with the remains. Was Lester alone? Had he had help? The investigation branched new paths. Motel staff were re-interviewed, housekeeping logs searched. Security. Footage was found showing a second man visiting Lester's garage weeks before Paige disappeared, a tall man in a hoodie. The man's face was never fully captured, but his gait matched Paige's mom's gait, a chilling possibility that someone manipulated both victim and suspect. Defense attorneys pounced on this revelation, claiming reasonable doubt. They argued the DNA trace suggested another killer, not Lester. They noted no evidence tied Lester directly to the gorge. He had no blood on his hands, only circumstantial injury evidence. The taped remains offered no timestamp of his presence. Forensic experts countered. Duct tape fibers and fracture match from Leroy's garage were identical. The tape's unique tear seam was a precise match, like joining two pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The probability of two tubs of identical tape being at Lester's property was negligible. In court, forensic anthropologists explained how decomposition in a gorge accelerates quickly. Moisture, insects, and temperature breakdown remains in months. The fact they were still tape-bound showed deliberate concealment. Insect life on the bones confirmed the timeline. Soil and pollen analyses tied the remains specifically to the Route 50 site. Digital maps and geotagged phone data from Lester's cell phone placed him within proximity 10 kilometers from the gorge on 3 occasions. On the day of Paige's disappearance, after the arrest, and the day before the body was found. There was no convenient explanation for those trips. Jurors saw photos of the gorge scene, but no graphic gore. They saw tape and bone fragments labeled with numbers. They examined soil pathology sheets. They heard about a mystery male DNA sample, the shadow in the case. But forensic presentations included statistical likelihoods, establishing it was 80% likely Lester was sole abductor. The remaining 20% pointed to unsolved questions: the hooded man, the unexplained DNA. Defense attorneys weaved that uncertainty into doubt. Then came testimony from a former inmate who said Lester had confessed in jail. "I didn't mean for her to die. I didn't plan it. I panicked." That statement, though not a full confession, reinforced motive and guilt. Combined with the gorge evidence and forensic chain, prosecutors said it was enough. They urged the jury not to let doubt hide a killer behind forensic ambiguity. As the trial neared its end, the town felt a mix of relief and dread. Paige's remains had been found, ending one kind of silence forever. But the possibility of an accomplice, another person lurking in the shadows, kept fear alive. The public debated. Did justice require only one man behind bars, or did the unknown DNA demand further pursuit? The jury retired. Every juror saw the tape evidence. Every juror heard the confession. Every juror understood the science. They also weighed the unknown DNA. They faced one question: was Lester the killer, or just part of something darker? Days later, the verdict came. Guilty on counts of kidnapping and first-degree murder. The courtroom exhaled. Paige's children cried quietly. The ember of doubt flared, still smoldering questions about another name, another person. But justice had been delivered, one piece of truth nailed to the witness stand. In the hush after the verdict, detectives reopened the search for the second DNA match. The gorge remained a crime scene, evidence bags unopened as they continued. Cold case work. Forensic genealogists were brought in. And although Paige's story ended with brutal clarity, the whispered questions lingered. Who else was part of that night? Whose DNA would next rise from the tape? The gorge had given up Paige. Now it might give up more. This chapter builds on forensic detail, duct-taped remains, pollen, soil, entomology, introduces a new mystery DNA element, and closes with a court. Victory balanced by lingering questions, all pacing designed to hold tension and prepare for a final resolution. Sources: the courtroom hummed with tension as the prosecutor delivered the closing argument. The weight of years of investigation pressed into every seat. Through their meticulous work, cell phone pings, motel logs, testimony from the former inmate, about Lester's chilling admission and the grisly discovery in the gorge, justice had come within reach. The jury had heard about the duct-taped remains, the soil samples laced with local wildflower pollen, and experts detailing how insect activity pinpointed the post-mortem interval to within days of that last summer evening. But still, lingering, like a shadow, was that second DNA profile, unmatched and unidentified, found on the tape binding Paige's remains. It suggested someone else had touched them. The defense had wielded this uncertainty like a weapon, asking, could this unidentified man, this unknown male, be the actual killer? Could Lester be innocent, or at least have had an accomplice. The jury faced two possibilities: convict on clear mounting circumstantial evidence, or let doubt prevail. As the judge read instructions, emphasizing that reasonable doubt must be resolved in favor of the defendant, the room grew quiet. The prosecutor reminded them of the former inmates. Recorded statement: "I panicked. I didn't mean for her to die." It was not a perfect confession, but when weighted against the forensic fact pattern, the duct tape linking garage to gorge, Lester's distinctive limp captured in motel recordings, the soil and pollen tying Paige's remains to that location, and Lester's presence nearby on key dates, the narrative pointed overwhelmingly at guilt. Lester sat impassive, though his knuckles whitened as he gripped the table edge. His lawyer, rising for one last defense, reminded jurors that forensic mystery still hung over the case. The unknown DNA sample had not been matched. No witness could place Lester at the gorge. In the absence of Paige's full remains, there was no direct proof he caused her death. That invisible thread of uncertainty was enough, they urged, to deliver a verdict of not guilty, or at least guilty of lesser charges. The jury filed out. After hours that felt like days, they returned. One juror held a folded piece of paper. The judge asked the foreperson to stand. Guilty on all counts: kidnapping and first-degree murder. A collective exhale passed through the courtroom. Paige's family, bruised by more than a decade of grief and confusion, wept with relief. Her children, now older, clung to their father. For a moment the case felt concluded. Outside, the press swarmed. The prosecutor spoke to microphones. This verdict is not just about one man. It's about truth, closure, and the power of science in modern justice. He paused. Reporters asked about the unidentified DNA. He acknowledged ongoing efforts with forensic genealogy. If there's another person with meaningful connection, we'll find them. The second male's DNA did not exonerate Lester. It added a chapter still being written. Days turned into weeks. Investigators reopened motel logs, searched for the hooded man who had once visited Lester's garage. Photographs from local wildlife cams were reanalyzed. Experts combed through the gorge site once more for preserved genetic traces. With cutting-edge forensic genealogy, they hoped to trace the male profile to distant relatives, then to a likely suspect. Meanwhile, Lester Jones was sentenced to life without parole. As he was led from the courtroom, his expression unreadable, Paige's children watched from the gallery. They felt vindicated, some sense of justice at last. Yet pain lingered. She had been more than a statistic. She was a mother whose secret world drove her into a man capable of violence. Her choices, though hidden, had shaped her fate. In the months that followed, curiosity around the unknown DNA sample grew. Headlines asked, "Is another killer still at large?" Experts in forensic genealogy noted recent cold cases solved by DNA decades after the fact, like the Italian case where investigators sifted through thousands of profiles to link perpetrators. It was technically possible someone else had handled the tape, but statistically improbable that another participant existed without motive or connection. The prevailing theory became that Lester acted alone, but tiny cracks told of hidden support. Did someone drive him to the gorge? Did he have a helper or an unsuspecting accomplice? Then one evening, Paige's youngest daughter, now a quiet teenager, stumbled upon a dusty file in Lester's garage, overseen by detectives during cleanup. It contained a single photograph. Paige in happier times, but behind her, a man in the shadows, his face cropped out. The discovery prompted a new angle. Was this someone Paige knew from her secret life? Someone who perhaps lured her into that final meeting? Detectives created a task force. Motel employees, phone company workers, and even hotel night staff were interviewed anew. They asked if anyone remembered seeing her with a second man, someone lingering in the background. More logs were recovered from junked hotels, and typos on phone receipts were cross-referenced. Then, breakthrough. A retired hotel clerk recalled the couple. He remembered an argument outside a motel, a man telling Paige she'd get what she owed. His voice, albeit a fleeting memory, carried the pregnancy of vengeance. No name, no face. But it lit the flame of a fresh investigation into the unknown DNA. Prosecutors decided not to retry Lester. They already secured conviction. Instead, this became a secondary probe, a cold case within a cold case. For forensic genealogists, it became a spark to explore his DNA profile, compare it to known criminal databases, and undertake large-scale surname inference. Paige's family, now finding cautious peace, urged detectives, if there was another, bring him forward. They held a memorial on the canyon's cliff edge, scattering her ashes where the gorge meets the sky. The wind carried flour from the ceremony, a subtle nod to her baking beginnings. Though the unknown DNA still haunted the case, the conviction brought them a foundation to rebuild from. In the end, the documentary closed with Paige's story, not just of tragedy, but of complexity. A mother juggling love and shame, secrets and survival. A killer brought to justice, even as shadows lingered. Science had conquered half the mystery. The rest lay ahead. But for now their last words echoed. She was more than her secret. She was Paige Birgfeld. This final chapter weaves courtroom, drama, forensic results, lingering mysteries, and emotional closure, while acknowledging the unknown DNA thread that keeps the story alive and realistic. The narrative respects suspense writing principles by combining resolution with open threads, leaving viewers both satisfied and thoughtful. Sources: